Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel with Redmond Magazine, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. The topic of today's webcast is a CISO debate. What's the Achilles heel of security in 2021? Sponsored by Semperis. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. There will be a Q&A session towards the end of today's presentation, so please type any questions that you may have in the Q&A box. Semperis has also provided some resources which correspond with today's webcast, so please take a moment to check those out. They can be found on the right-hand side of your console. And finally, this webcast is being recorded, so keep an eye out for a link in your email so you can rewatch the presentation or share it with a colleague. And now I'd like to introduce you to our four speakers. Today we are joined by Limor Kessem, a CISO, CISM, and Executive Security Advisor at IBM Security. James Azar, CISO at Confidential. Evan Francen, co-founder at FRSecure and CEO at Security Studio. And also Chris Roberts, hacker in residence at Semperis. So we are in for a great discussion, and without further ado, I'll pass the time over to Chris to get us started.
Cool. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody for hosting this, Redmond and Semperis, much appreciated. And Limor, James, Evan, thank you very, very much for coming and hanging out on this one. We should have a little bit of fun for the next hour or so. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, let's kind of get into the meat of this, actually. I mean, we've had offline conversations. For the audience here, we've kind of had a chance to have offline conversations and everything else. And we have a number of questions that I kind of want to go through because there's so much media out there about what CISOs should do, what they shouldn't do, where they need to focus, what they don't need to focus on, and everything else. And it feels like, you know, your head's just spinning all over the time. And do I buy this tech? Do I do this? Do I not do this? So for me, I think what I wouldn't mind taking a step back and really having that conversation about, as a CISO, we kind of know our roles in, well, we should know our roles in the security space. How do we take those roles and have those conversations with the rest of the business to help them understand and help them to be more effective? And I'm gonna start this one off. I'll do ladies first, obviously. The more you're up first on this one. Give me some thoughts on this if you don't mind. You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. I think that, you know, when we begin with, first of all, have a seat, you know, with executives and with board members. Make sure that there is a seat there for the CISO, because sometimes they report somewhere down, you know, maybe to the CIO, and they have some kind of a different role where they're not represented in those meetings. That's a start. And then start really learning how to business speak it, you know, bring them to where the worlds connect together. So showing up prepared and explaining the risks to them, you know, this is going on. How does this translate into, let's say, downtime? How much is it going to cost? What is it going to impact? If this happens and we're down for 2 hours, 10 hours, 2 days, what's going to happen to our reputation? What's going to happen to our stock if, you know, if we have stocks in the market? And then talk about, hey, this is what I'm doing with my team to address this risk so this doesn't happen. And then also kind of lay down what, you know, what I need for this. I actually need also this kind of budget, this kind of, you know, just kind of bring it to them in a business language that they can understand, because they're not going to understand when you talk to them about a vulnerability or the solar winds poison something. Yeah, it's not going to work that way. So I think just bringing them where the worlds connect is the way to get through.
Interesting. That seems to be something we've had to learn over time, or we've had to understand, because for years it feels like we've always gone on and basically spoken geek, and obviously it doesn't seem to have gotten us where we need to. James, any thoughts on that one?
So I like to align myself with business goals. So like Limor said, I'm all about sitting with the executive leadership and understanding the organization's, you know, direction. Where are we going? What are we developing? What are we working on? Where does the company see itself in a year from now, 2 years, 3 years? What technology are we working on? And then align that tech with the business risk and the cybersecurity risk. So and the second thing I'll say is, in my head, I'm a salesman all the time. So I am trying to sell cybersecurity as part of the product. So how much do we plan to charge for this? Could we incorporate security into it, which would provide a greater value, which could increase our margins on this specific sale? So that's how I like to kind of look at it is how can I make security a business enabler, and rather than just an expense, an actual profit line on the budget sheet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that idea, definitely. Evan, I mean, you're in and out of boardrooms and organizations, flipping out probably almost on a daily basis. Give me some thoughts where you've seen and how you've done on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I reinforce, what James and Limor said. James, your point is, I think, dead on, right? Everything in an organization needs to provide value to the organization. So how do I and my security organization provide value to the organization? And just protecting us from loss isn't enough. What's the mission of the organization, and how do I align with that? How do I make that happen? And sometimes we have to get really creative, and we have to pull off, kind of a sales approach. And another thing that, I found in working with, CEOs and boards of directors is they don't all speak the same language. It's really important for me as the CISO to establish a relationship with them where, there's trust, there's just this free flow of information because, we're almost friends. And then I can start to use that to do what's best for my friend, which, CEO or, board member. But that relationship is really, really important. And then figuring out what language they speak. What resonates with this CEO? Is it money? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Where did they come from? Trying to figure out how I'm going to craft my message to fit with theirs.
So this, it's interesting. We talk about, I've heard communication, I've heard collaboration, I've heard understand the client, I've heard this. These are very, very human discussions. These are very, very non-technical. I'm not going to walk in with the latest and greatest purple bloody widgeted something piece of whatever the heck it might be and say, hey, this will fix everything. These are very human conversations and very collaborative ones. So to me, this kind of hits that next question, which is, unfortunately, in a lot of our industry, we have tended to focus on security being something that you can buy. You can go buy an asset, go buy a widget, go buy a program, and it'll fix everything for us. We seem to be coming back around to the human aspect. So I wouldn't mind some discussions on that one. Give me your thoughts on this one. James, you can start us off on this one if you don't mind.
So from the human element side, and I think that's a really great question, is I think we're sick of tools. I think I say for everyone, like we're just done with tools. And I employ one thing with all of our team, which is one, as a security team, you got to have a diversity of thought in the room. So how do we essentially diversify the way we use the current technology that we have on board? Meaning, is there additional uses that we can apply it towards that maybe weren't in the use case for this specific technology, but could be adopted for another part of it? And I think the second aspect of it is you want to build a security culture in an organization, and you don't want people looking at security as here they come with all the blocking. And that's like such a common thing to be said, but I'm all for everyone in security understanding that we need to sell security to everyone else in the company, and people in the company are our customers, and different departments are different customers that we need to serve in the organization. And that's how we approach it with the human element.
Yeah, no, I like that. That tends to look. Limor, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think that overall humans are inherently more important and more, foundational than technology in the business. But their importance does not make them more technological or conducive to technology working for them. So we buy a lot of technology because we want to protect the business. We want to also cover for what humans are naturally prone to missing when they work. Emotionally manipulable, maybe they're distracted, they're overloaded, they're stressed out. So we kind of use technology to cover for a lot of human aspects. We talk about automation a lot. That's another way we cover for human aspects, and yes, we have tools, but that's not the only way. At the end of the day, we have to trust the humans to, have the ideas, innovate, make the decisions that need to be made for the business. And I think that we use technology to serve us as much as we can inside the business. I'm not saying we need a whole bunch more tools. I think we need the right tools to get to that goal.
Evan, if you wouldn't mind hitting this one, it actually hits one of the conversations we're in here. We've talked about tool exhaustion. I mean, I'm thinking we've all probably walked into organizations that we're doing work for and gone, okay, you've got a list of 130 tools. How many are you actually using? I'm interested in some thoughts on that one. Back to the human aspect. I mean, we obviously need technology to help us and to enable us and all this kind of good stuff. How do you have those conversations with clients like, hey, congratulations, you bought all this crap and most of it's useless?
Yeah, it's cool that I like going after these guys, by the way, because I get to take James's. A lot of times I tell clients that what makes me a good consultant is I'm really good at stealing other people's ideas. So thanks for that. Yeah, the people element, absolutely. I don't know how many times you walk into. I just had just this morning I had the same conversation with my own team, right? My own internal team. We were talking about 7 applications we walk over in order to set up a new project, at FRSecure. Like 7? Why the hell do we need 7? Can we do 3? Can we do 4? We really need to streamline this process. And Bruce Schneier was the first time I ever heard anybody say that complexity is the worst enemy of information security, right? And so looking for places where we can simplify things, another side benefit of that is that humans understand simple better, right? When I go down rabbit holes and try to explain some of the security things we deal with to an executive, their eyes gloss over, forget about it, right? But if I can simplify something, they can understand it, and when they can understand it, then they can buy into it. And when they buy into it, they can champion it, and then you really start to drive the culture, right? I've said many times to executives, sometimes my job is to socially engineer the entire company. I'm trying to get us all to build good security habits, because it only takes somebody not following a defined process or some, garbage in, garbage out. It always comes back to the human element. Computers, they're easy to secure because they only do what we tell them to do. Sometimes we tell them to do things that we shouldn't.
So then, okay, that brings up a conversation about accountability. Again, perfect example is this. We've gone in there, we've sold a tool to the organization, and actually one of the crew just said this one on the Q&A. We've gone in there, a tool has been sold. Where's the accountability in for whether that tool does its job, doesn't do its job? Is the accountability in the organization that's buying it? In other words, you three, you are the CISOs for the organizations. It's the accountability with you to ask the right questions. Why am I buying this tool? What is this tool going to do? How does it fix things? How do I measure it? How do I do the metrics? Is the accountability with the industry to make sure they give you that information? Is it education? Is it both? There's a lot going on. Limor, you're hanging out at probably one of the biggest organizations floating around out there. Give me some thoughts on how you have the organization and how you position that side of things.
So I think that overall, how do we hold ourselves, our industry, and our peers more accountable is by coming together and, like you nailed it when you said, asking a lot more questions rather than coming in and, making assumptions or, stuff like that. That's sharing a lot more. We don't want to share. We don't want to tell others what's going on a lot of times for a whole bunch of reasons. And, we just need to recreate a different atmosphere where accountability comes to a different level, that you feel comfortable being accountable and for others to be accountable to you as well. And, I kind of think outside of the organization about these in the information security industry, thinking back to, cases just happened recently when things get fraught in the industry. For example, when SolarWinds just broke and everybody kind of looking for, where's the real blame? Let's see what's going on. Companies had to come and be upfront and, come and be accountable for things and be asked the questions. And then things started really unfolding and we started to understand a lot more. But this is where I think that, a lot more questions should have been asked in the first place. Or another thing now with the game, the Cyberpunk game, they just got breached. Already kind of a lot of voices are speaking a little bit of against them and how they got hit or whatever. I think that, again, here, we have to come together differently as an industry. Just ask more questions, share more information, and do more for one another, and that way keep each other accountable.
Here's my thing on that, though. To me, there's a bit of a balance in this one, because I'll be the first to admit, when the water company in the US got nailed last couple of days, my first reaction is, number one, why on this great green planet that we have did you think it was a good idea to put the stupid thing on the internet in the first place? You've had 20 or 30 years of us talking with you, yelling at you, having conversations, demonstrating that putting that stuff anywhere near the internet is a daft-ass idea. Yes, you need to get to it from the internet. Maybe here's how you do it. You've had 20 years of firewalls and VPNs and crap that have allowed you to do it. So on one hand, I want to take that step back and go, oh, we'll help educate them. On the other hand, I'm like, you bunch of bloody numpties. I'm like, how on earth did you think this was a good idea? And it really is a balance. And that's where I'm having a hard job sometimes with this. James, give me some thoughts on that one, because it is a balancing job sometimes.
So the balance, I think, relies in what Limor just said, which is ask questions, understand the business, right? When we talk about the Florida, water plant, water treatment facility, Israel had something similar happen over the summer, where their water treatment facility was hijacked, and Iranians tried to poison the Israeli population. And so there comes a time where we kind of need to look at industrial control systems a little different from a cybersecurity perspective than maybe our own companies and some of the other organizations out there. And there needs to be more of a community effort to support those organizations, because they are cash strapped. They don't have a lot of the talent because they can't afford to pay for larger talent. And maybe it's time, when in a webinar with, over 100 people watching, and Chris and Evan and Limor, who are, leaders in our industry, we look at how do we create an industry movement to support those organizations, because that can affect any one of us. What happened in Tampa could happen in Atlanta, it could happen in Colorado, it can happen anywhere. And so I think there needs to be a more of a community effort rather than, finger pointing at organizations like that, because they just simply don't have the budget. They just don't. It doesn't exist.
And you're right, they don't have the budget. But the knowledge is there if you look for it, if you understand it, if you find... I mean, a lot of us are doing as much as we humanly possibly can to disseminate that data as often as we can. And I think that's... Evan and I and Ryan have had this debate a number of times on the shit show on Thursday nights, where we go through this and go, how do we get the word out more effectively? How do we tell more people? How do we literally burn it into every hillside to think about safety and security as one, just to think about some of the fundamental basics? I think one of the biggest challenges, and again, this is almost a CISO conversation as well, is we do hold the keys to the kingdom, we hold a lot of stuff. How the heck do we almost become our own best public relations to get this data out there? I'm at a loss in some ways. Without, my attitude is just kill more people. I hate to say it, but seriously, this is Thanos and he's clicking of the fingers, wipe out half the planet. He's right. People maybe will pay attention when they have to climb over bodies to get to the keyboard.
Yeah, it's when something really bad happens. It wasn't until, somebody died on the way to the hospital that people started understanding that ransomware can have that kind of consequence. And while it wasn't a big one, it can be a big one very easily. Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from with that.
Evan knows my attitude. I'm actually going to hit him up with this one. Evan knows my attitude. It's like, seriously, we just kill more people eventually. Anything in human history only happens when we've suffered. Evan, go on, dig me out of this hole.
Again? No.
Yeah.
But I agree. Accountability in our industry, I think there's just fundamental broken things in our industry. I think many people that work in our industry don't even know what we're trying to do as an industry. We've had that conversation, Chris, where what are we doing? What's the use? If the goal is risk management, well, then I can do that. If the goal is risk elimination, that's impossible. I can't do that. If that's the goal, then, what am I doing? We talk about accountability. Accountability for what? What did you do? Did we ever define that this is wrong and this is right? There's just so many different places I think we can focus. And to everybody's point here, we do need to come together. I think we can come together with a much more cohesive voice, and we've tried it before, right? We've got many organizations, I think in our industry, what typically happens, it seems, is money sort of taints the mission, or something taints the mission. So you had this original purpose, this original mission for that organization to drive change in our industry, and then it kind of got watered down or something. Because I think the accountability for people who configure things incorrectly, treating information security like it truly is a life skill. If you don't have information security skills and you're using a computer, why? Or using an iPhone. I mean, we've just gone so fast, as a society, that we've neglected, basic fundamental information security safety things along the way. In terms of who to hold accountable, the people, I think certain organizations should be accountable for not following good security practices. Ignorance shouldn't be an excuse, and unfortunately, the first few people that get held accountable, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But hopefully everybody else will start to take notice. Like, oh crap, okay, that's what happens when I leave RDP open with single-factor authentication to a water treatment plant. Okay, I get it. I think in our industry, we need to start holding the wolves. I call them wolves, and maybe I'm just not as politically correct, but there's a lot of people in our industry who sell people a lot of stuff that they don't need, that they don't know how to use, even if they did need it. We should never be doing that. Or you're selling something that you say is capable of doing this, but it can't. So there's a lot of work to do, but I think where we have to start is figuring out some way that we can all come together to solve these issues together.
Yeah,
I think I think Evan just nailed it on the head. There's responsible voices that want to do good, right, Chris? And that's exactly what you brought up a second ago. Like, we're out there screaming it, yelling it, speaking it, preaching it, talking about it, and yet there's a bunch of voices out there creating FUD, misinformation, disinformation, creating challenges, and unfortunately, what ends up happening is people don't know who to listen to. And especially when you have a respected voice speak nonsense, it ends up tanking everyone's mission. And that's where there needs to be that's where I talk about the community aspect, and I talk about it a lot, is the idea that we need to get the responsible voices in one room and drown out the voices that are kind of trying to do it for, I want to say, overall monetary gain. So they're tanking good missions because it doesn't line up their pockets the way they want it to.
Right.
And, when you get into security, there's enough money to go around. And there's some organizations that, I do stuff for schools here in Georgia for absolutely free. Like, I don't charge them a thing. I go and I help them as much as I possibly can, because we know the education system is underfunded, right? So we need to do the same with the companies that, get us water, because I don't think any of us want to have a cup of coffee that ends up, or tea. Sorry, in Chris's case, it's tea that sends us to a hospital and possibly our death.
Yeah. No, I think it's actually something. It's ironic that we wandered into this area, because it's something Evan, I, and Ryan are doing it behind the scenes, which is trying to literally put something together to get a lot of us on the same song sheet, doing the same thing. And I think, we talk about the CISO conversation. To me, I think this is one of those things with the CISO's Achilles heel, is we don't have a really good mechanism for us all to come together and share. I think that's one of those, I think that's a really interesting one that I hadn't really thought of, and we haven't got down in the Q&A, is how do we as CISOs more effectively talk to each other, work with each other, find a common platform, share information, even if I can't call, Limor up and say, hey, I just had a breach over here today. Here's what you need to learn from. Here's what you need to think about. At least I can maybe keep back channels open and do some of that. Or I can go, oh, good grief, I just had the most dumbass conversation with a vendor who's trying to sell me magic connectivity and all sorts of interesting stuff. Ignore the hell out of them. And so we need that. We've got the Tinkerers group.
Invisible processes, right? We just talked about.
Oh my God, that was it. Invisible processes. Yeah, Evan got sold invisible processes the other day. All right, I want to bring it back. Let's bring it back in for a second. We're all, I mean, this is fun. I'm loving this because I'm glad we had you guys. All right, actually, I want to hit this one. One of the crew, I've lost him. Where the Smurf is he? Oh, there we go. Actually, here. So Dutch hit this. Really nice question that came in, which is, what's the best piece of advice for up-and-coming CISOs? So for somebody that wants that pathway, best piece of advice in where to invest their time now so that they're ready to be CISOs. You know, he said 2022, but ready to be CISOs in the next couple of years. So again, we'll do it in order again. Limor, if you wouldn't mind kicking that one off, that would be appreciated.
Oh, I have a lot to say about this one.
Yes,
I think that, you know, and this kind of really connects with other things that we said during this, you know, 30 minutes that we've been on the webcast, is that a CISO is not going to have the opportunity to speak the geek talk to management, and that would be successful. So I think that if somebody is coming through the very technical realms and wanting to go to the CISO role, that's where they start to, you know, understand how to collaborate, understand how to write business stuff, how to speak about business, understand how to translate what you're doing into the business goals. And like we're talking before about aligning with, you know, what is the business strategy? What's their mission? What are they trying to achieve? What kind of things are they trying to do? How would I as a CISO be an enabler to that? And how am I going to fit in with that? And kind of start really understanding it's about the business. It's not going to be all about the, you know, the security things we could put here, there, or the controls I could buy from that vendor, you know, and all those things that we know as security people is not what's going to make this successful. What's going to make it successful is collaboration, is having allies in the organization, is kind of planting the seeds of different people in different departments that are going to be your committee eventually, and things like that that are going to be a lot more important. So somebody looking to come up as CISO, those are the most important things in my mind that they can do, because the rest of it they probably already know.
Got it. James, give me some thoughts on this one. Up and coming CISO, what advice do you give them?
Up and coming CISO, I'll say this. On the CISO Talk podcast I do, and I'm not shamelessly promoting, but I have an agenda here. So 100 and some odd CISOs I've spoken with, right? 100 and some odd CISOs that I've had on the show over the last 2 years. Every single one of them articulated the same exact thing, and I'm kind of giving something out that I was planning on putting out at the end of the month, but I'll say it right now, is understand business before you understand security. Meaning, if you want to be a CISO and you're really smart, and if you got your CISP and if you got your CISM and you've got all those great certs, the level up is go take a business MBA class or go take a bunch of trainings and join a bunch of groups around the role of the CFO, the CIO, the CEO, the CTO. Listen in on those kind of calls and understand their challenges. So when you're interviewing for that CISO role, you're able to speak business talk. I think I wouldn't be in a CISO role today if it wasn't an entrepreneur for a decade, working with CEOs and CTOs and building products and being part of the business. I think had I grown in security like a lot of other folks I meet, there's a challenge to comprehend the overall business system. So the one thing I will say is security now, thanks to COVID, thanks to SolarWinds, thanks to the press, now security is really getting the attention of the C-suite. It's, you know, when COVID happened and work from home started, I said it's our Monday night football, right? Well, like it's prime time, baby, right? Like I'm waiting for Chris Berman to be like, and this CISO blocks this attack, whoop. But like that's it right there. We're in prime time, and if we go and talk geek, we lose our prime time seat. We end up being benched. So in order to earn our primetime seat and keep it, we've got to be Tom Brady. So we got to know every aspect of the business, everything. So I make it a point to speak and attend at least 25 different business functions that are outside of security every single year, to either attend or speak at.
Here's the other thing I'll add to that one. And then I'm going to want Evan's thoughts on this one. I've always done it, which is it shouldn't be the CISO just going to talk to leadership. It should be the CISO with legal, HR, compliance. And we all, back to that Tom Brady analogy, Tom Brady doesn't win the football team on it. It doesn't win the game on its own. It's an entire team effort. And sometimes it is the offensive team. So it is basically, it is the CISO chucking whatever they're chucking. You've got legal, compliance, HR, and a bunch of other folks that are all singing from the same song sheet, as long as everybody is actually, as long as everybody's collaborating. All right, Evan, you're up. Give me some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, the best CISOs, the ones that I admire the most, are the ones who are really fantastic leaders. They have just incredible leadership, abilities. Certainly understanding the business is critical. I think another really good quality for CISOs is using reason, just logically using, because every time you go, we've probably all done this before, when you go to the board of directors and I give you my opinion, and they challenge my opinion, but they don't challenge facts, right? They don't challenge logic. When I show them how I got to where I got, it seems like some CISOs, either didn't have that real ability to kind of connect the dots or lost it somewhere along the way. So, being prepared to be challenged often. I also have found that CISOs that did kind of come up through the ranks a little bit, whether it be through business or maybe through security, they also have, kind of this unique ability to put risk into context. It's really easy for us to find a specific vulnerability, a specific risk, and just focus all of our attention and time on that. But is that the risk I should be working on right now? The leadership thing comes into huge play when I'm distributing accountability, right? A CISO can't do everything, themselves. They need other people. They need to be able to, delegate responsibilities, hold people on your own team accountable for those responsibilities. And don't rush things. There are going to be plenty of CISO positions, open. They're not going away anytime soon. I see a lot of people that want to become a CISO, and they want to become a CISO now. Well, just hold off, relax. You'll get there. If you have what it takes, they'll notice it, and, eventually you'll become one. Also, maybe one last thing. Find a CISO that you admire. Find one that, you've read something that they've written or read a book, saw them speak somewhere. Like that person really resonates with me. And then see if you can't follow, right? Study the way they do things. Study the way they speak, how they're effective. And then, maybe if you can, reach out and, see if they'll mentor. A lot of us are really, really busy. We'd love to mentor everybody, but, there's only so much of us to go around.
So many hours in a day. Yeah, exactly. Totally on that one. You know what, your conversation about, learn your trade craft is a huge one. I see way too many people, LinkedIn being the perfect one, way too many people who've got 2 or 3 years in this industry and they're experts. They're an expert in this, or I'm like, no, quit that shit. None of us are experts. We should all still be learning. Too many paper tigers, too many experts in this industry. All right, I actually want to bring it down into the weeds just a little bit. What I want to have a conversation on is probably more tactical stuff for a minute. We got some time. We're doing pretty good. I want to have a conversation about much more tactical things. So, brand new CISO on the job, walking into an organization. We have seen too often that critical assets are missed. We've seen too often that people forget about certain industrial control stuff or Active Directory or all sorts of other assets. If you are walking into an organization as the CISO, as the virtual CISO, as the consultant who would be the CISO, if you can, give me your first week on the job. Give me your first 24 hours or first week on the job. What are you going to do? I'm really interested, and I'll throw that open because this wasn't one of the 10, but just seeing some of the questions and listening to some of this, I'll throw it open. Who wants to take a first hit at this one?
I'll go first this time because then these guys can steal from me if there's anything we're stealing.
Go for it.
So one of the things I'll do before I even take the job, before I'll even work as a consultant, because I don't have a real job anymore, is really define roles and responsibilities. What specifically is it that you expect out of a CISO? And if I can, I'll coach that a little bit so that expectations are really clear. So I can go back to that and say, look, we met the expectations, or your expectations are unrealistic, and this is why. Day one on the job, I need to figure out what it is I'm working with. I need to take an inventory, not just of software and hardware assets. I need to take an inventory of my people. What are their capabilities? How do they have specific skills and gifts that maybe they don't even realize? So I usually spend the first couple of weeks just trying to get my hands around all of that stuff. Because you can't possibly protect the things you don't know you have. So that's where I would normally start.
Cool. All right. James, Limor, you're up next, whichever one you wants to hit this next.
Limor?
Well, I'm definitely with Evan. Yeah. I mean, I'd say, first thing I would do, as like he said, he wanted to define things to say, okay, if I'm already in there, I'm not going in the battlefield blindfolded. I want to know exactly what we have here and discover as many assets and data as I possibly can. I want to look at the architecture that's existing. I want to look at, and then look at the people, what kind of skill sets do I have? What kind of engineers do I have here? What are we working with that we have to protect? What kind of data, start classifying data and stuff like that. I mean, just the very, very basics of understanding first really needs to be done here, and then kind of what has been done, what hasn't been done, and look more into controls that are how they're performing and so on down the line. But the first thing is, you want to know. It's like being in the military. You're going to war. You want to know what you've got, what kind of tools, what kind of people, what kind of skills you're going to the battlefield, and does it match what you need to do?
Yeah, that's actually, the battlefield one's an interesting one. One of the first questions I always ask whenever I'm going in, either on consulting or tabletop or virtual CISO, is how can I kill you? It's back to killing again. Sorry. It's how can I kill the company in 24 hours? What could I do?
Oh,
It's me. It's the Scottish roots. It all comes down to blood, guts, and whiskey. It's as simple as that.
Oh, goodness.
But that drives a really interesting conversation, because what happens is the manufacturing guy goes, well, shit, if you throw a handful of sand in the machine, we're done. The finance person goes, if the market goes up and down like a yo-yo, we're done. HR's like, we don't have enough bodies as it is, so we're screwed if we lose anybody. And it's really interesting because all of a sudden, every single one of them realizes that they all have these pain points. And as the CEO, your job is to look at those risks overall. And then security comes in and goes, well, we have unfortunately gone in and go, we trump everybody, but we don't. We are part of that puzzle. And it's like, can I help mitigate the handful of sand? Can I help with the human resources? And all of a sudden we look like we're not going in and going, we have this. It's like, how can I support you? How can I support you? How can I do something with you? And it changes that conversation. But again, I'll step back. James, first couple of weeks on the job, new virtual CISO. What are you going to do?
What am I going to do? Well, I think everyone said everything that I would do. The one thing is you got to build relationships and trust and you've got to build relationships and trust fast as you're going in. And that's one thing where trust isn't always earned fast. I think there's also the aspect of understanding who are you replacing or what are you establishing? Because we can all come in with a playbook. And we all come in kind of with in our heads. We have our checklists, we have our plans, we have our frameworks, we've got our controls. We all have that. But when we go in, if we just try, security isn't one glove fits all. Security is very unique and very different from organization to organization. So how do we, one, identify that? And number two, how do we build those relationships and understand what are we walking into? If you're walking into a really toxic relationship with the security team before you showed up, maybe the first thing we need to do before we can take any inventory and technicality is really understand that toxicity and try to kind of bridge that, because otherwise we're bound to fail. Now, after you've done that, if we get really into the weeds, you start a full inventory. And it's not just about tools and controls that are in place, staff. Who's working for you? Who's on your team? What are they doing? What's their expertise? And are the people in the right role that fits their set of skills? Oftentimes you walk into a situation, especially a pre-existing one, where people are in roles they have no business being in. And that's where you have to start. You got to get, your best players playing their best position.
All right, so I am actually going to go back to tools for a second, because we've all got things that we like, we've all got stuff that we enjoy using. If I held your feet to the fire, hands to the fire, whatever, and said, I want 2 or 3 pieces of technology that I had to rely on. I had to understand that my AD was protected. I had to understand that whether somebody was inside, whether what was going on, eyes on the network. Give me 2 or 3 pieces of core technology. You don't have to use a specific vendor, but core technology that if it wasn't in, you'd want it inside that environment. Limor, you can hit this one first if you don't mind, please.
Well, I work for IBM, so I want a good SIEM solution in place. I need to have eyes and ears on things. I want to make sure everything is coming into one place where it can be analyzed and taken a look at, and where things, you can have your thresholds and you can do a lot of things when you have that sort of solution in place. So I had to mention that one.
You had, and that's part of the reason I picked on you in the first place. There's logic, there's some method to my madness sometimes. James, give me some thoughts on this one.
So I'll share kind of what I do now, and since I'm CISO confidential, you'll never know. But we look at cloud visibility tools.
Please hold.
We know.
So I look at cloud visibility, and the more and more that we work in the cloud, and the more and more our vendors work in the cloud, I'm looking for more tools that give me more visibility of data and processes that are naturally and natively occurring in the cloud. So I support
across your
SIEM
different
because I love,
environments.
Yeah, across different environments, across different. Yeah, there's. I mean, cloud visibility, I think, is a whole new topic that's going to be a challenge that I think some people who are sleeping at the wheel are going to wake up to it, and it's going to be very ugly one day. It's that, and by the way, API security. Those are the 2 things.
Yeah.
Like, those are the 2 tools I look for.
I like the cloud especially, because I mean, you almost have 2 schools of thought. You've got people who look at the cloud and go, okay, I'm going to go there in a nice organized fashion, greenfield. I'm actually going to build. Oh, you got people like, chuck it up in the cloud. It's somebody else's problem. Not.
Your favorite answer on what are you doing for cloud security is when they put AWS, and Dutch would love this. Like, what are you doing for cloud security? And on the security questionnaire, you see AWS. And you start shaking your head, smiling and laughing, and you go, okay, we need to set up a call with these guys. Time to do some mentoring.
Oh my gosh, totally. Evan, give me some thoughts on this one. Tools. I'm pinning you down to a couple of tools. What are you going to put in place?
I'm gonna take a cop out. There aren't 2 tools for me. It depends on the organization. It depends on what they do. If it's a software development shop, that the answers might be a little bit different than retail organization. I can't think of 2. What I'm a big stickler on. I have to know what it is we're trying to protect. So if we have cloud assets, I need to know what those assets are. I need to, and it's hardware, people for sure, hardware, software, data assets. So, we need to work on figuring out where our applications are, what applications we're using. So maybe it's an inventory tool, maybe it's a scanning tool. And then they need data flow diagrams. Too many organizations have no idea where their data goes, where it traverses. Those would be big things that I would need. In some organizations, we can do it in an Excel spreadsheet, and maybe Wireshark. We don't even have to spend a lot of money.
Oh my God.
But he's right.
I mean, it's something complex.
He's right. I mean, I'm actually going to go after this one for a second, and I'm going to pick on a vendor, and there's nobody here. I was at last year, so 2020 RSA. I was at dinner with a bunch of interesting folks, totally awesome folks. One of them, senior leadership at a very, very large software company, stood up and said, "We're only going to focus on the top 10% of our companies. And they said out loud, we're going to spend 80% of our time and effort on the top 10% of the companies. The other 10 to 20% we're going to spend on the next 10%, and that's it. We don't care about the last 80% of the companies that are handing us money every single month. We just don't care. We can't support them. We don't want to deal with them. We can't care. And when you look at it, that's 450,000 companies they just don't care about. That's small to medium businesses that they can't generate enough profit that they want to care about them, that they can't put enough into it. They don't have enough resources. And they were like, we're just going to send it to the MSPs, MSSPs. They can deal with them. And I sat there and I'm like, okay, from a purely financial market analysis, he's not wrong. But for every moral fiber in my body, I hate you at this moment in time. I hate you with a passion. And I'm just like, you are the epitome of exactly where information security has gone. We've moved from protect to profit. And so when we look at the tool and we look at the tech and we look at the 3 to 5 person company, and I go, how the hell do we take care of you? How do I take care of the 20-person company? How do I take care of the 50-person company that, quite honestly, everybody else has ignored because you can't make enough money off of them? That's where I think we've really, really failed. And again, from a CISO perspective and as an industry perspective, we've got to figure that one out. That's a huge one. So in some ways, you know, that spreadsheet and Wireshark probably will do it for them because they can't afford the big ass products. You know, nobody can go in and say, hi, I'm going to go buy CloudStrike at, you know, $100 a seat or whatever. You can't afford that shit. What can I do that's open source? What can I do that's something else? And to me, that's a huge calling, I think, that we really, really need to think about somehow or other.
Well, even some large organizations, right? We've got so many tools, so many complex things. We spent tons of money. Why? Why did you buy this? You know,
yeah.
Well, because this or that. And I think this, you know, the best piece of advice I ever got, you know, when I was very early into this industry with, you know, the 90s was the people who can secure their stuff better are the people who intimately know their stuff. Right. And so I grew up as a Cisco, you know, engineer in the 90s, and I knew my network like the back of my hand. I could almost tell whether the network was operating correctly by how fast the lights were blinking on the switches. Right. I mean, you just knew it so well. So sometimes I didn't need a tool, you know, to tell me if the network was not operating correctly. I just had this intimate knowledge. In most organizations, there isn't that intimate knowledge. There's so many things that have been added. It's a hodgepodge of technologies. You've had different staff changes. They have their own, you know, favorite tools and things that they'll bring to bear. And now, you know, it gets out of hand quick. So yeah, simplify. Go simple as much as you can.
Robert hit it beautifully. He's like, 2 tools I want. One is a non-IoT internet connected coffee maker, and the other one is somebody.
I have one.
I'm liking that. Go for it.
I've got one. I've got the non-IoT connected coffee maker. I've got
awesome. I got the kettle. The kettle is still not IoT enabled. I mean, that's the other scary part about it. Actually, that brings up a really good question. Okay, now we're talking about this. As an industry, and again, as CISOs, as you're looking to have conversations with organizations, simple question, is there a perimeter? And if so, can we define it? And if not, what the heck do we do about it? I'm throwing that open to whoever wants to hit this one first.
No such thing as a perimeter. What's a perimeter?
Yep.
Well, you're asking if there is a perimeter. It just means that you know there isn't.
You know, some people seem to think there are.
COVID. Go ahead, Evan.
There's not a perimeter. There's many perimeters. You know.
Okay, that's a good way of looking at it.
It wasn't all that long ago where we did have just kind of one egress, ingress point that we needed to focus on, but now we've got them all over. And then even, you know, getting past, we call it crunchy shell GUI center, right? Lots of people built their networks that way. So once you get past that one egress or ingress point, it's free reign. Pivot wherever you want. You know, you've seen that in breach after breach after breach. But now, you know, things have exploded much more. We've complicated things a lot more. So there's not one. There's many, many, many perimeters.
Limor, give me some thoughts on this one, then James, you're up.
So I wanted to ask you guys, I mean, would you consider, because when I thought about this question, the first thing that came to mind for me is that there is a perimeter, and it's the data, and it's everywhere the data is. And that kind of connects to me, with what Evan just said. There are many perimeters. It really depends where your data is, and this is where you need all your governance, your controls. If your people are doing a ton of stuff on the cloud, that's where your new perimeter is. This is where you have to focus. If you have a lot of stuff on premise, we still have the old perimeter, the old, the regular networks and everything else where people still worked in the office, and there was that perimeter. There's your, people working from home with the devices from the company or devices that they own. And so I think that it's everywhere your data is. And if we take an example, like for major corporations, let's say I say, okay, I want to bring my own device. They say, fine, but we're planting this thing on your device that if you leave or something happens, we wipe the entire thing, because this is where their data is. Not because it's a perimeter, data becomes a sort of a perimeter. So that's what my thoughts about it were.
Yeah, so you bring up a great point, Limor, which is there isn't, Evan started it with there isn't one, there's many perimeters. And then there's a network perimeter that used to be the traditional perimeter that everyone kind of looked at and said, we work at this address and this office with these floors, and this is our traditional perimeter, and we have identity access to physically enter this perimeter, and we've got security and all these different things. And now that's gone away, and now we deal with multiple perimeters. Some of it is data, some of it is network, some of it is identity, right? Some of it is beyond just that, but it's your vendors, your supply chain. You've got to look at all these different perimeters now, and you don't have one front. You're dealing with multiple fronts, multiple threats across a large attack surface that you may not yourself know what's going on. A lot of times you don't even know that, you have a new attack surface, because you just don't until you get an email from someone like Chris that says, by the way, we were looking here and here's everything we found.
I just got to bless me all questions and answers. Thank you. My sneeze off to the side. General rule of thumb in the household. You're allowed to sneeze twice. If you sneeze a third time, you're out in the snow and the cold because you got COVID and we don't want you back in the household. It's a general rule of thumb inside the household.
Oh my goodness, you've got COVID for a sneeze. That's pretty good.
Yep. 3 sneezes, your ass is outside. End of discussion.
That also works at the line in Costco. I
just had my COVID test yesterday.
Yeah? Oh, yeah, because you're traveling and all that craziness, aren't you?
Yeah. If they're going to let me back into the country, but yeah, it's negative, so we're good.
All right, splendid. It'll be good to have you back again. All right, so let's have a conversation. We are running up against the time. We've actually hit a bunch of the conversations on this one, which is actually really, really kind of fun. Actually, I've got a really good one for you guys. Actually, this is interesting. So it was a question that came in a lot earlier. As CISOs, as virtual CISOs, we typically will go into organizations that have spent quite a lot of money on tools, quite a lot of money on technology and processes. How do we have the conversations with them if we look at it and go, why are you doing this? It's the wrong way of doing it. It's not the right focus. How do we have those very, very delicate, but very important conversations where we have to admit and say, hey, look, you've gone the wrong direction. How do we, do you have those conversations? How do you do it? And how do you talk the company out of the direction maybe that they've gone in? I'm chucking this one open to anybody on this one, because this is a kind of a rough one. How do you course correct?
So Evan's got a really ugly grin on his face right now. That's worrying me about his answer.
Face. It's not just the grin; it's the face, man.
Because we've all hit it, unfortunately.
So I'll say this is how I try to do it: is one, identify what it is. Once you realize that a plan that they've spent money on is down the drain, the last thing you want to do is kind of let them know this is bad without really showing an alternative or seeing if anything can be rescued from what they've invested money on initially. If you reach the point where nothing can be rescued, it's just a really bad implementation, it's a really bad plan of what they've spent money on, so forth, you've really got to go and build a business case to move it somewhere completely different. And I think this is where a lot of times we want to try and say, I know everything. I'm a security guy. Don't use X, use Y. And I think we have to come and say the business case for X doesn't make any sense. Yes, we've spent this much money, but stopping it now and going down this other going down, path Y is going to make life much, much easier for us and in the long run pay off, because that's the only language a business is going to understand. Otherwise, it's going to be like, well, that's what you have and you got to deal with it.
We just got yelled at, by the way, because we didn't mention specific tools, and we didn't say, oh, you should go buy, oh, we're being sponsored by Semperis. You should go buy Semperis, absolutely, or you should go buy ClownStrike or
who you should buy? You should buy Chris Roberts, Evan, Limor, and James.
There we go.
And subscribe to our shows and podcasts and buy us all.
There we go. I'm actually gonna address that one because it's a hot button, because we've said it a number of times and we might not have said it properly. There is no one size fits all. It's all situational aware, situational dependent. You could go into one organization and figure out that Sentinel-1 is perfect. You could go into another and realize, hey, you got to have IBM in there. You can go into another and go, hey, you got to have Security Studio. You go into another and go, holy shit, we need James in to help us understand. There isn't one size fits all. People have got to figure this shit out, and they've got to figure it out quickly before we start getting eaten by more bloody marketing crap. Now, I will say we have to pay better attention to everything that's inside our four walls. We're really good at looking out and trying to put all these kind of wonderful things on there, but we're not so good at understanding what's inside our four walls or dealing with it when stuff happens, which we've only got a few minutes left. I do want to hit this quick one. I'm all for doing tabletop exercises, Dungeons and Dragons for business. Give me your guys' thoughts on that one as leaders in organizations. Limor, you can kick that one off, please.
So, how I would go about this is kind of say to the organization, let's look at the threats. What are the problems we're trying to solve here? Let's take a threat-centric approach and move things around accordingly and maybe move in a different direction. Let's look at the architecture, bring in the engineers. What can I shift or do differently without getting anything new? Without making too much of an earthquake if they're already in a bad situation, and kind of convince them by really looking at what is the problem we're trying to address here. And these are your problems, both from external, like you're saying, look outside. We look a lot outside, but also look inside and kind of monitor, like, is it doing what it's supposed to do for you and what you had hoped it would do? And if not, let them kind of see it for themselves as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. James, you got something for us on this one?
So I'm a bit perplexed. I think I'm going to kick it down the road to Evan and come back.
Totally, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and I wasn't paying attention. No, I'm just kidding.
That's all right.
No, because I think these things are, oftentimes I'll treat these as good mentoring opportunities. So if there is, what I don't want to do is bring my own bias into the equation, because I know that I'm not going to be here forever. I know that I'm here for a period of time. I really do want to do what's best for the organization, not what's best for me. I get paid, right? I think if you focus on the mission, you make money. If you focus on the money, you don't make the mission. So it's getting the sort of the priorities straight. Going through, we're doing the asset inventory that I need to have. If you don't have one already, the next kind of step is, why do we have the things that we have? Can we potentially, aggregate certain things, or because a lot of times that'll lead us down this other direction. Because what I want is my team to be able to defend the things that we're doing as well, not just me. Right? If I get, win the lottery tomorrow and I'm not here tomorrow, will this team be able to step up? So I think that's, usually the way I approach it. But like to your point, Chris, there's no one size fits all. There have been times when I've been kicked out of board meetings because I was, too blunt, but I do get paid to tell people the truth. So that's what you're going to get. I'm going to try to do it the right way. But if I made you mad, sorry about that.
Celebi, yeah.
I kind of go with a disclaimer, which is, when you get me, you're going to get the full honest truth, and sometimes you're not going to like how it sounds. But that's what you got me here for. Now, I think there's another aspect to it, which is when you go into an organization, whether it's a consulting or you're the new CISO, you almost want to listen more than you talk. And I think oftentimes we feel the need to talk more than we listen. And I think there's an aspect of just listening and then letting people run their mouth. And Intel used to have a saying that you should be the quietest guy in the room, right as you're sitting. And the quietest guy in the room is typically the guy who's going to have the most accurate report. Simply because you're listening, you're really paying attention. And that's one thing I had to take on, is because sometimes I'm too honest that it offends people like Evan. And people go like, I don't know how to take this. Like, whoa. But at the same time, you kind of have to go back and just say, all right, now I listen more. And I go into a room and I want to listen. I want to hear what people have to say. I don't really want to speak much. I want other people to speak. I want to see where the wind blows, because I also want to distinguish between wolves and sheep within my team or within the organization. So I need to know who's really the people who lead and who are the people who just follow the latest fad in the organization.
Yeah, I like that, definitely. All right, we have hit the top of the hour. Well, because we have. Oh, apparently I'm still Raquel. That's awesome. I love it. Hi, everybody. It's life. I could be Raquel. It actually doesn't bother me. All right. I would love some closing thoughts from everybody, because we've hit the top of it. This has been freaking fantastic and much appreciated. We've hit a bunch of the Q&A, so we kind of did Q&A the whole way through the thing. And again, ladies first, please. Limor, if you would close us out with some thoughts and comments, if you don't mind, please, for everybody.
I think that one of the biggest things that we have taken away from this, and that everybody said, was about, collaboration, coming together, asking more questions, listening more, all these things that, we know them inherently to be something we want to be doing more of. And we get, swept up a lot of times in the shuffle of everything that's happening and all the, the fires that we have to put out and everything. But we do have to also come back to that center and kind of understand that this is the way forward, and it's a way to make us stronger, both internally in our organization and also outside the community.
Awesome. Thank you very much. James, what you got for us? Closing comments?
So my closing comments is the following. Security is difficult. It's hard. It's fun. It's never the same. And if you enjoy sleep, normal diet, or normal family life, I suggest you find a different industry. I suggest financial services. Job security. Awesome. We're always going to need money.
That is true. Evan, what you got for us?
I learned a lot here. I mean, I really did. It's the first time I've had the ability to sit with James and more. And I had some personal takeaways, and that's really cool. I think the thing I use the most often in all of this is information security is not about information or security as much as it is about people. Mm-hmm. And just keeping that top of mind that people are the ones who suffer when stuff goes wrong. People are usually the cause of, myself included, right? I'm people also. Because I think a lot of times in our industry we point at others and say, oh, this stupid users or people. No, you're part of the problem, right? And we're all part of this thing. And so we talk about collaboration, being inviting, to those, to that reality.
Yeah.
And you just never stop learning. I think there was and don't lose yourself in all this stuff. I've seen myself on the edge many, many times of burnout, of just, trying to be somebody I'm not, kind of thing. Just be yourself. Don't take this so damn seriously that it ruins your family, your relationships.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So
takes time to learn that.
Oh, yeah. Does it ever? I'm actually going to add one extra thing, and Limor's little one has actually reminded me of it. At least 3 of us have got grey, and Limor gets the pass on this one because I can't see grey, but 3 of us have got grey. We are, to some degree, the old school. Let's be honest on this one. our role as well, and James, you hit this one, our role as well is to bring in that next generation of CISOs, of leaders, of people that can carry the message and bring it forward. Our role is also to bring that in such a diverse way that we humanly possibly can. I try to do this whenever I have conversations with people. I don't want me reflected in a mirror in 4 or 5 different ways. I want different people. I want different ideas. I want different thoughts. I want people from outside our industry to come in and give these conversations. So this has been fantastic. I love you guys for doing this. Thank you so very much. Limor, I mean, it's some crazy hour of the night where you are. So I am hugely appreciative.
Yeah.
James, as always, thank you for this. And Evan, freaking amazing for taking the time out from where you are. And for Semperis and for the Redmonds folks for putting this on. Thank you seriously, thank you for everybody and for all the amazing questions. So we'll see if we can do this again one day. Everybody take care, stay safe, stay healthy. You know the deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys all for being with us today. And thank you also to the audience for attending today's webcast, which was sponsored by Semperis and presented by RedmondMag.com. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.